It's strange, you know. The sound of footsteps in a house that's no longer yours. They echo differently, colder, more hollow. When I was young, the floors of this house sang beneath my feet. Every creak had a voice. Every hallway remembered laughter. But now, as I sit by the window in my old armchair, the one with faded roses stitched along its back, I hear strangers walking about downstairs. They're my children, yes. My blood, my family. But to me, today, they feel like strangers, holding clipboards and whispering numbers that sound like prices. They've come to prepare the house for an auction. My house, my life, my memories. If you're listening to me, my dear, I want you to pause for just a moment. Look around the room you're sitting in. Think of every object that means something to you. Every book, every teacup, every photograph. Now imagine someone putting a small white sticker on it, a price tag, and saying, lot number 43. That's what they're doing to me today. If that image touched your heart, my dear, do me a kindness. Press that like button, so I know you felt what I feel. They think I don't hear them. They think my hearing's gone with my years. But old ears don't die. They just learn to listen differently. I hear every whisper, every sigh, every secret. Mother can't keep all this. My eldest, Edward, says downstairs. His voice used to be gentle when he was a boy. He used to bring me dandelions from the garden and call them golden suns for Mother. Now his voice is hard, like the brass doorknobs he polishes. Practical, distant, shiny, but cold. Then there's Margaret, my only daughter. She never liked this house. She said it smelled of old wood and damp wallpaper. She wanted glass and light and modern things. Now she's walking through my memories with a notebook, listing the furniture as if she's inspecting items in a shop. Someone will love these, she says to Edward. But I wonder, did she ever love them herself? And then there's Thomas, my youngest. He doesn't speak much. He just follows his siblings, nodding, staring at the floor. He always hated conflict. He always loved me the most. I can see it in his eyes, though he avoids my gaze now, as if my sadness might infect him. The wind whistles through the window cracks. The curtains tremble like old ghosts. And maybe that's what I've become. In this house, a ghost watching her own life being priced, boxed, and sold. They've hired a man from the auction company. He wears a long grey coat and smells of cigarette smoke and varnish. His shoes click sharply against the wooden floors, like hammers on nails. Every time he points to something, I feel a sting in my chest. The grandfather clock. Beautiful piece, Edward. Original brass pendulum. Late Victorian. Could fetch a fine price. He says, fine price. And I hear, goodbye. That clock has ticked through every heartbeat of my marriage. Every birthday of my children. Every sleepless night I spent by my husband's bedside when he was ill. I remember the night he passed away. The clock struck 3 times. And then, for the first time in 50 years, it stopped ticking. It just stopped. No reason, no explanation. The next morning, I wound it again, and it worked. But I always believed he had something to do with it. And now, they're selling it. Mother, it's only a clock, Margaret says, when she sees my expression. Only a clock. Tell me, my dear listener, has anyone ever looked at something that holds your entire life and called it only a thing? If yes, then leave me a comment below. Tell me what that thing was. I'll read your story like it's my own, because maybe, in some way, it is. You see, I wasn't always this quiet old woman in the corner. Once, I was the soul of this house. My laughter filled the walls. My footsteps chased sunlight across the hallways. The walls remember. The mirrors remember. Even the cracks in the paint have memories. But people don't. People forget. They forget the small things, like how the kitchen smelled when I baked apple tarts on Sundays, how the garden shimmered when rain kissed the roses, how I used to hum when I sewed their school uniforms. Now they walk past those very same places and see nothing but old furniture and wasted space. I hear Edward again, speaking to the auction man. We'll keep a few items, of course. Mother's things from the sitting room. But the rest, it's time to move on. Move on, as if the past is a piece of luggage too heavy to carry. My fingers tremble as I reach for my teacup, the one with tiny blue flowers painted along its rim. It's chipped, slightly, but it's mine. I turn it over and see the faint initials carved underneath. E+L, Edward and Lily. My husband carved that for me on our 5th anniversary. He said, "So even if the tea grows cold, my love stays warm underneath." Now, my tea grows cold, and my children don't even see the initials. Do you know, my dear, I often wonder if love ever truly leaves the walls of a home. Perhaps it lingers, invisible but alive, like perfume that never fades. Or maybe it turns into whispers, soft and sorrowful, like the ones I sometimes hear at night, because I do hear them, whispers, especially from the attic. It started after they decided to sell the house. I'd hear light footsteps above my room, though no one goes there anymore. Once, I even heard someone call my name, softly, almost tenderly. "Lily." That was my husband's voice. I'm sure of it. And when I told Edward, he laughed. "Oh, Mother, you're just imagining things again." Am I? Maybe. Or maybe the house doesn't want to be sold either. Last night I dreamt that the house was crying. The walls wept, the chandeliers trembled, and the windows fogged up as if sighing. And when I woke, my pillow was damp. From tears, mine or the house's. I'll never know. I think it's trying to tell me something. Because this morning, when I walked through the hallway, the clock that had been still for weeks suddenly ticked once. Just once. A deep, heavy tick that echoed through the emptiness. I stopped, my heart trembling, and I swear I smelled his cologne. Oh, dear one listening to me now. If you believe that sometimes love leaves behind a sign, tap the heart below. Let me know I'm not mad for believing. They're packing the dining set now. I can hear the scrape of the chairs, the clatter of the china, the same china we used every Christmas, every birthday, every goodbye. It's funny, isn't it? The plates that once held laughter now hold silence. I look out the window. The garden is still there, wild, untamed. The roses have overgrown, but they're still beautiful. I used to sit there with my husband every evening. He'd pour me tea and say, "When I'm gone, Lily, promise me you'll keep the garden alive. Flowers should always have someone to talk to." I did. I kept that promise for 30 years, until now. Because tomorrow, the new owners will arrive, and I'll be gone. Edward says he's found a place for me. A smaller home, more comfortable, that's what he calls it. But I know what it is. A care home. A place where they put you when your stories become too heavy to carry. I'm not angry, no. Anger has long left me, but sorrow. Sorrow has made a nest in my bones. When I was a girl, my mother used to say, a woman's memories are her true home. And I think she was right, because even if they sell these walls, the real home, the one made of memories, lives inside me. Still, it hurts, because every object in this house has a story. And those stories belong to me, and tomorrow, strangers will carry them away. I don't know if I'll see them again, but maybe they'll carry a piece of me with them. If you're still listening, my dear, tell me, Have you ever had to say goodbye to something you love too much? Write it in the comments. I'll be reading, I promise. Old eyes still see. The evening light is fading now. It paints the walls golden, soft, forgiving. For a moment, everything looks like it used to. My husband's portrait on the wall catches the glow. His eyes, oh, his eyes still follow me. I whisper, they're selling our memories, my love. And I swear, his painted smile flickers, sad, almost alive. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, the clock ticks again, once, twice, and then stops. The air feels heavy, almost waiting. Something's coming, and I know what it is. Night comes quietly here. The kind of night that hums softly, as if afraid to disturb the ghosts of daylight. The house is quieter now. My children have gone to their hotel in town. They said they'd be back in the morning to finalize the arrangements. I know what that means. The auction list, the moving vans, the goodbye. For now, it's just me and the house. Just us two. The way it was before all the noise and decisions and whispered pity. I sit by the window again, my hands wrapped around my teacup. Empty now, but still warm. Outside, the moonlight falls across the garden like silver dust. The roses shimmer, and for a moment, I imagine I can hear them whispering. My husband used to say, flowers speak to those who remember their scent. Maybe that's why I can still hear them. The house sighs. Old wood, old bones. But it's a living sigh, almost human. And then I hear it again. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. Coming from above. The attic. I freeze. I know my children locked it this afternoon after they cleared a few boxes. I even watched Edward turn the key. I remember the sound, that sharp, final click of metal against metal. But the footsteps continue. 1, 2, slows and deliberate. I want to call out, but the words stay trapped in my throat. Instead, I listen, and with every step, I feel something familiar. Not fear, but recognition. Like someone I once loved has returned, walking gently so as not to wake me. I take the candle from the table, shielding its small flame from the wind that slips through the window cracks. My slippers whisper against the wooden floor as I move toward the staircase. Is someone there? I whisper, my voice trembling between curiosity and disbelief. No answer, just the faint creak of the attic floor. You might think an old woman like me should stay put, but no. Memories are stronger than fear. I've lived too long with silence, not to follow a sound that feels alive. Step by step, I climb. The candle flickers, painting trembling shadows on the walls. Familiar shapes that twist into faces of the past. I see my children running up these stairs in their school uniforms. I see my husband standing at the top, waiting with open arms. But when I reach the landing, there's no one. Just the attic door, locked. Or at least, it was. Now the key hangs loosely in the lock. My heart beats slowly, painfully, as if remembering how to feel. I turn the key. The door opens with a sigh, long and tired. The air inside is cold and thick with the scent of dust and time. And then I see it. The old trunk. Brown leather, brass corners, initials carved into the lid. E+L, Edward and Lily. My husband and I. But this trunk, it's not supposed to be here. I had it stored in the cellar years ago, after he passed. How did it get to the attic? I kneel beside it, my knees aching, my candle trembling in my hand. When I touch the lid, the leather feels warm, almost alive. My fingers trace the initials, and a strange ache swells in my chest. Are you here, my love? I whisper. The candle flickers violently, once, twice, then steadies. I take it as a yes. Inside the trunk are things I haven't seen in decades. Letters, photographs, bits of fabric, a dried rose, and one small wooden box wrapped in a yellow ribbon. I open the box, and there it is. The locket, the one he gave me on the night we moved into this house. Inside our pictures, young, foolishly in love, caught forever in a moment that time forgot. I lift it to my lips and close my eyes, and just then I hear a whisper, soft, like a breath against my ear. Don't let them take it, Lily. I freeze. The voice is him, my husband. The candle shakes in my trembling hand, but I don't scream. I don't even move. My heart feels too full to fear. Why now? I whisper back. Why speak after all these years? The silence that follows is thick and alive. I can almost hear his answer inside my chest. Because they're taking what's ours. And then, as if the house itself agrees, a sound echoes from below. The clock. It ticks once, then twice, then chimes 3 times, exactly like the night he died. I stare toward the staircase, every breath shallow. The candle flame bends toward the door, as if pointing the way. And then I smell it, his cologne, that faint mix of tobacco and pine. It's impossible, and yet, here it is. If you're listening, my dear, and you've ever smelled something from your past, a scent, a perfume, a memory, and felt someone's presence, even for a moment, tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. I close the trunk carefully, pressing my hand against it as if to seal the memory inside. I whisper, I won't let them take it. When I return downstairs, the air feels different, heavier, watching. The portraits on the walls seem to follow me with quiet eyes. The candle burns low, dripping wax like tears. And then I notice something strange. The dining table. Before they left, Margaret had covered it with a white sheet, hiding the china they planned to sell. But now, the sheet is gone. The china is laid out, perfectly arranged, as if waiting for dinner. Each plate gleams softly in the candlelight. Every spoon is in place. Even the silver candelabra is lit. Flames dancing though no one lit them. My heart stutters. My breath catches. Someone, something, has set the table, and there are 4 chairs. Not 3, 4. One for me, one for Edward, one for Margaret, one for Thomas, and at the head, an empty chair, my husband's. I step closer, barely breathing. The chair creaks softly, as if someone invisible just sat down. And then I hear it, faint, gentle, unmistakable. A spoon stirring tea, but there's no hand, no cup, only the sound. Tears spill down my face, but I'm not afraid. I whisper, I know you're here. The air shifts again. Warmer now, the candle flames steady. For a moment, I feel peace, but it doesn't last, because suddenly, every candle goes out. The room plunges into darkness, and from somewhere near the door, a low voice whispers, not his this time. Colder, sharper. You shouldn't have opened the trunk. I drop the candle, clutching my chest. My voice shakes. Who's there? No answer. Only footsteps. Slow, deliberate, fading away into the hall. When I finally find the matches and relight the candle, everything looks normal again. The table is covered. The candelabra is unlit. The trunk key is gone. Was it all in my mind? Maybe, or maybe not, because as I turn to go back upstairs, I notice something new. A mark on the wall, just beside the clock. A small carved heart, and inside it, the initials, E+L. But I never carved that there. He did, and he's been gone for 30 years. It's late now. I should sleep, but I can't. My thoughts twist like the ivy on the walls, tangled and alive. I keep seeing that heart, that carving, that sign. Is he trying to protect the house? Or warn me? The house is too quiet again. The silence feels heavy, waiting. I close my eyes, but the images won't leave. The trunk, the table, the whisper. I whisper into the darkness. I'll protect our memories. I promise. And somewhere faintly, the clock ticks once in reply. Oh, my dear listener, if you're still here, thank you. Truly. You have no idea how much it means to an old woman to have someone listening to her story. If you're feeling what I'm feeling, do me a kindness. Tap that subscribe button. Share my story with someone who still believes in memories. And leave me a message below. Tell me where you're watching from. England, the US. I'd love to know how far my memories travel. Because tomorrow is the day of the auction. And I fear it won't just be my belongings that get sold. It might be my soul. Morning came too soon. The first thing I noticed was the smell of polish and dust. My children were already here, walking briskly through the house, giving orders to the auction men. I could hear their voices echoing through the hall, bright and artificial, like laughter at a funeral. From my chair in the corner of the sitting room, I watched them move about, tagging my life with numbers. Lot 17, the rosewood dresser. Lot 23, the grandfather clock. Lot 29, the piano. Each number felt like a small funeral bell. Good morning, Mother, Margaret said, her smile tight, rehearsed. We've arranged for you to sit comfortably in the drawing room during the auction. You'll have a nice view of the garden. The garden, my garden. At least that would be the last thing I saw. I nodded, forcing a smile, though my hands trembled around my teacup. And after the auction, I asked quietly. Edward didn't answer. He just looked at me with that kind of pity that burns more than cruelty. The kind of pity people give when they've already decided something for you. It'll all be fine, Mother, he said instead. You'll see, but I won't see, will I? Because they're not just selling the house. They're selling everything that made me visible. Every proof that I lived, loved, lost, and built something that mattered. The auctioneer arrived soon after. A tall man with a smooth voice and a smile like polished brass. He wore a pinstripe suit and carried a leather folder. I could smell his cologne before he even entered the room. It was sharp, metallic, and made my eyes sting. He shook Edward's hand. A fine estate, sir. Truly. We expect a good turnout. Heritage pieces like this always draw interest. Good, Edward said. We'd like to finalize everything by this evening. The auctioneer nodded, scanning the room. His gaze slid over me briefly, pausing only for a second. Enough to make me feel like just another piece of furniture. When he left, I whispered. He didn't even ask if I built this home. No one replied. Oh, my dear listener, have you ever sat quietly in a room where everyone speaks about you as if you're invisible? It's a strange kind of death, one that begins while you're still breathing. If you've ever felt that, tell me in the comments. Let this old heart know I'm not the only one who's been erased in plain sight. The auction began at noon. Cars started arriving one by one, shiny, loud, and out of place against the country road. Strangers walked in, curious and smiling, their shoes clicking against the floors I used to polish myself. They peered into rooms, opened cupboards, touched curtains. Every time they pointed at something, my stomach tightened. Oh, this clock's lovely, one woman said. That mirror would look splendid in the hall, said another, and a man laughed softly, running his hand along the piano. Beautiful tone, shame it's gone out of tune. Gone out of tune. Yes, that's what happens when no one listens anymore. I sat silently in the drawing room, watching the auctioneer take his place. He stood near the staircase, his gavel gleaming in the afternoon light. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice grand and commanding. Welcome to the estate auction of the late Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Late. He called me late. Edward didn't even correct him. He just looked down, adjusting his tie. I wanted to laugh, or maybe cry. How easy it is for people to bury you before you're gone. The auctioneer continued. We begin with lot number 1, the vintage silver tea set. Exquisite craftsmanship, early 20th century, perfectly preserved. My tea set, the one I received on my wedding day, the one that served 1,000 cups of love, gossip, and grief. I felt my chest tighten. Shall we start at £50? Voices murmured, hands lifted, numbers climbed. 50, 60, 80. The gavel struck. Sold. To the lady in blue. Just like that, my wedding gift was gone. Lot number 2, he continued. The rosewood dresser. I stopped listening after that. The words blurred into noise. All I could hear was the faint ticking of the clock behind me. Slow, deliberate, steady. The same clock they had tagged as Lot 23. And then the air changed. You may think me mad, dear one, but I swear to you, the light shifted. It dimmed, though no clouds had crossed the sun. The air thickened, heavy with something unseen but alive. The house felt awake. I looked toward the hallway. The portraits on the wall, my husband, my children, even my younger self, seemed sharper, clearer, almost breathing. And the clock. Oh! The clock began to tick faster. No one else noticed. The auctioneer droned on, cheerful, confident, but I could hear it. The frantic rhythm. Tick, 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 tick. Like a heartbeat in panic. Then, silence. The clock stopped. And in that silence, a whisper. Lily. My name. Soft. Near. Inside the room. I turned slowly. The candle on the mantel flickered, though no wind blew. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, trembling. But behind me, in the mirror, I saw something, a shadow. A figure standing near the clock. Tall, familiar. My husband. He didn't move. He didn't speak again. But his eyes, those gentle, steady eyes, were fixed on the auctioneer. I wanted to call out, but my throat closed. My heart felt too full of memory to beat properly. And then, it happened. The grandfather clock chimed once, loud, deep, then again, and again. 3 chimes. Every head in the room turned toward it. The auctioneer paused, startled. That's strange, he said with a nervous laugh. It wasn't wound. Edward frowned. It hasn't worked for weeks. But it was working now, loudly, proudly, defiantly, and with each chime, a framed photograph fell from the wall, one after another, glass shattering across the floor. Gasps filled the room. The auctioneer dropped his gavel. Margaret screamed. I didn't move. I just whispered, he's here. Thomas, pale as paper, grabbed my shoulder. Mother, what's happening? I looked at him. My voice steady for the first time in years. He doesn't want this, I said. He doesn't want them sold. Before anyone could reply, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Panic spread through the crowd. Someone shouted. Someone dropped a vase. I sat still, listening. In the darkness, the house came alive. Footsteps in the hallway. The whisper of curtains. The faint creak of the attic door, and beneath it all, a single voice, low, calm, male. You promised. Lily, my breath caught. I kept my promise, I whispered. I did, but the voice came again, softer now. Not this way. When the lights finally returned, the room was empty of bidders. People had fled outside. The auctioneer was trembling, muttering something about faulty wiring and bad luck. Edward looked furious. Mother, this is absurd. Did you touch the clock? Did you do something? I met his gaze. It wasn't me. It had to be, he snapped. You're the only one who... He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. Because the clock, the one standing silently now, began to tick backward, slowly, steadily. Back and back and back. I could almost feel time folding in on itself, like the house was rewinding, remembering, and then the sound stopped. The pendulum hung still, and beneath the clock, a small door, one I had never noticed, slid open. Inside, something glimmered. Edward bent down, his anger forgotten, curiosity taking over. He reached inside and pulled out a small envelope, yellowed and fragile. He frowned. "What's this?" I knew, before he even opened it, because that envelope wasn't just paper. It was the last letter my husband wrote before he died. The one I never received, the one he told me, in a dream, that he had hidden somewhere safe. Edward unfolded it, his hands shaking. His voice cracked as he read aloud. "To my dearest Lily, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and our home is all you have left. Promise me, my love, never to let them sell it. This house holds more than memories. It holds what I could not tell you in life. There is truth buried within these walls, and one day they will come for it. Protect it, Lily, and it will protect you. Forever yours, E." The silence after his words was heavier than grief. Thomas stared at the letter. Margaret went pale, and Edward dropped it. He muttered, "This is nonsense. Just an old man's sentimentality." But I could see it, the fear flickering in his eyes. Because he knew, he remembered. There was a secret, something he'd hidden, long ago, with his father. And tomorrow, it would all come out. I don't remember when the light began to fade that evening, whether it was the clouds outside that grew darker, or the heaviness in my chest that made everything dimmer. I only recall sitting there, in that same armchair near the window, the one Arthur had fixed so many times, his hands smelling faintly of varnish and tobacco. I remember staring at the dusty glass, watching my own reflection instead of the garden. It was strange. I could see myself, but behind me, I could almost see someone else. I thought it was just the loneliness playing tricks again, but it wasn't, because the house had begun to breathe. You might not believe me, my dear, but sometimes, when you've lived in a place long enough, it begins to echo your sorrow. The floorboards creak where you once walked in happiness. The walls hold whispers that never quite fade. And at night, if you listen closely, it speaks back. If you've ever felt your home speak to you, quietly or sadly, then you know what I mean. Tell me in the comments, my loves, if you've ever heard those whispers too. That night, I heard the old grandfather clock chime, even though it hadn't worked for years. 1, 2, 3 dull notes that seemed to hang in the air. I rose, my knees trembling beneath my wool dress, and shuffled toward it. When I touched its wooden frame, I swear it pulsed, like it had a heart of its own. It was then that I noticed the envelope, folded, yellowed, and pressed between the base of the clock and the wall, as though it had slipped there years ago and waited for someone brave enough to find it. It had Arthur's handwriting. I froze. My fingers shook as I pulled it out, dust falling over my lap. The ink was faint, the paper fragile. To my dearest Eleanor, it read. My breath caught. My name, written in his hand after all these years. You know, when you've lost someone, you think you've already cried every tear possible. But finding something like that, it opens a wound that never really healed. I opened the letter slowly, afraid it might crumble to dust. And when I read it, oh my dear, I felt the earth shift beneath my feet. He wrote, If you're reading this, my love, it means time has done what I could not. It has taken me away before I could tell you the truth. I hid something in this house. Not money, not jewels, but something far more valuable. It is my confession. You must find it before they do. I remember dropping the letter onto the carpet, my breath shallow. Before they do, who did he mean? My children were still small when Arthur died. Henry barely 10, Margaret just 7. Who could they have been? And yet, as I stood there trembling, I realized something dreadful. My children had been coming here lately, not just to visit, but to search. I had caught Margaret in the study weeks ago, rifling through drawers, pretending to tidy. Henry had asked me strange questions about old documents and ownership papers. Could it be that even they were looking for whatever Arthur had hidden? For a long time, I just stood there, the ticking silence around me like a noose. I folded the letter again and pressed it to my chest. The old house moaned softly in the wind, and I whispered, "Arthur, what have you done?" That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through every corridor, each creak of the floorboard like a heartbeat beneath my slippers. My candle flickered, and in that unsteady light, I began to see the house differently. Every photograph, every chipped teacup, every scar on the wallpaper felt like a clue. If you're still listening, my dear one, stay with me. Don't go yet. These old bones still have more to tell. And if this story stirs something in your heart, tap the little thumbs up. It means more than you know. By morning, the house smelled of dust and lavender, and my tea had gone cold before I even touched it. I placed Arthur's letter in my apron pocket and began searching. In the attic, I found boxes full of old letters, faded photographs, and small tokens, ribbons, postcards, the dried bouquet from our wedding day. But there was something else there too, a wooden chest. I'd seen it before, of course. Arthur used to keep his tools in it, but when I knelt down beside it, I noticed the lock had been tampered with. Someone had tried to open it recently. My heart thundered. I reached for the latch, but it was jammed. I sat back, breathing hard. "Margaret," I whispered. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew. Later that afternoon, Margaret arrived, her perfume too strong, her smile too rehearsed. "Mum, we've got something to discuss," she said, setting her handbag on the counter. Her tone was gentle, too gentle, like a nurse speaking to a patient. I asked her to sit. She did, crossing her legs in that polished, impatient way of hers. "It's about the house," she began. "Henry and we think it's time to let it go. You know, sell some of the old things, make space, maybe move you somewhere more comfortable. That's what they call the grave these days, don't they?" I smiled faintly, my hands wrapped around my teacup. "You mean the auction?" I said softly. She blinked. "You know," I nodded. "The whole town does, dear. You forget. These walls have ears, and I've lived long enough to hear them all." For a moment, guilt flickered across her face, but she quickly replaced it with that polished smile again. "Mum, it's not what you think. We can't manage this place anymore. It's old, falling apart. So am I." I interrupted. "But I don't see you putting me up for sale." She looked away. "It's not the same." "Oh, it's exactly the same, love. You just don't want to admit it." I wanted to scream, but instead, I just sipped my cold tea and looked out the window. The same window Arthur had once looked through while promising me a forever he couldn't keep. If you're still here listening, my darling, I want you to know something. When people grow older, they don't fear death as much as they fear being erased. So if you've got someone who raised you, loved you, or even just remembered your name, call them tonight. Tell them they matter. And if you felt the sting of being forgotten, leave me a little heart in the comments. Maybe we'll heal together. Margaret left soon after, pretending everything was fine, but I saw the way she avoided my eyes, the way she touched the attic key in her pocket before walking out. That night, I went back upstairs with a hammer in hand. The chest lock finally broke with a sharp clang that echoed through the rafters. Inside, I found not tools, not jewelry, not money, just a bundle of letters tied with a black ribbon and one small envelope addressed in Arthur's hand again. It said, "If they find this before you, everything we built will be gone." I sat there on the attic floor, candlelight flickering against the walls. As a cold wind whispered through the cracked window, my hands trembled as I untied the ribbon. The first letter wasn't from Arthur. It was from someone else. A name I hadn't heard in 40 years. Eleanor, if you ever learn the truth, forgive me. I knew the handwriting instantly. It was from my sister Rose. The room spun. Rose. My sweet, reckless Rose, who had vanished one summer and never written again. The one who'd broken Arthur's heart long before he ever proposed to me. I wanted to stop reading, but something in me needed to know. The next few lines blurred in my tears. He was meant to marry me, but fate had other plans. When I left, it wasn't by choice. Arthur knew. He promised to keep it secret for the family's sake. But secrets rot, Eleanor. They always do. I remember crying so hard that the candle nearly went out. The truth hit me like winter wind. Sharp, endless, merciless. My husband had once belonged to my sister. For years he'd loved her first, and maybe never truly stopped. The house groaned as if it too mourned with me. I looked around at the cracked walls, the fading portraits, the dusty relics of a life built on silence. Suddenly, every memory felt like a lie. Every touch, every kiss, every photograph of us smiling. All of it haunted by someone else's name. I whispered, "Arthur, why didn't you tell me?" And somewhere in that stillness, I thought I heard him whisper back, "Because I loved you too much to lose you." I sat there in the attic, the letter trembling in my hands, as though the words themselves were alive and didn't want to be read. The candle had almost burned down to its stub, leaving the room in a flickering gold that painted ghosts on the walls. The silence pressed against me like heavy velvet. Somewhere below, the pipes groaned, the house shifting in its sleep. Or maybe it wasn't asleep at all. Rose's words kept circling in my mind. He was meant to marry me. That single line echoed louder than any thunder outside. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the rewriting of an entire lifetime. Everything Arthur and I had built, every smile, every touch, had been born from something hidden. A wound disguised as love. I pressed my hand to my heart. It ached like it wanted to stop beating, just for a moment, to rest from all the remembering. And yet, beneath all that pain, there was something else, something that didn't belong to this world anymore. The faintest smell of pipe smoke. Arthur's pipe smoke. It drifted through the rafters, faint but unmistakable. My eyes darted around the room. The chest was still open, the ribbon and letters scattered like autumn leaves. And in the corner, near the old window, I saw it, a shadow that wasn't mine. "Arthur," I whispered. No answer, just the slow sway of the curtain, as if someone unseen had brushed past. You might think I was imagining it, my dear. But when you've loved someone as long as I did, their presence never really leaves. It lingers in the spaces between heartbeats. If you've ever lost someone and still feel them near, you'll understand me. And if you do, tell me in the comments below. Tell me who you still feel, even when they're gone. The next morning, I woke in the armchair by the attic window. The letter still clutched to my chest. The world outside had turned pale. One of those English mornings that feel more like ghosts of light than actual sunshine. I made my way downstairs, the house colder than usual, my mind tangled in questions. I found Henry waiting in the kitchen. He had that impatient look he always wore these days. Eyes sharp, mouth tight, as if life itself was an inconvenience. "Mum, we need to talk," he said, without even a hello. I said nothing, just put the kettle on. The whistle filled the air between us. "It's about the auction," he continued. "We've already found buyers for some of the pieces. The portraits, the china, that chest upstairs." My hands froze mid-pour. "The chest?" "Yes, the one in the attic. A collector's coming next week to appraise it. He says it could be worth something." "Worth something," I repeated softly. "Do you know what's inside?" He hesitated. Just your old things, I suppose. I smiled, a sad, tired smile. No, my dear, it's filled with the truth, and I don't think you can sell that. He frowned, clearly not understanding. Mum, you're making this harder than it has to be. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help. You can't stay here forever. The house is falling apart. I turned toward him slowly, my eyes meeting his. So am I, Henry, but you don't see anyone putting me up for auction, do you? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There it was, that flicker of guilt, the smallest sign of the little boy I once held in my arms. For a brief moment, I almost believed he'd remember who I was, but then his phone rang. He answered it quickly, his voice low. I caught fragments. The buyer's schedule. Yes, next week. When he left, I went to the sitting room. The old grandfather clock was silent again, but I could still feel Arthur's heartbeat in its wood. I ran my hand along it and whispered, They're selling you too, my love. Every piece of us. And for a moment, I swear the pendulum moved. Just once. A single slow swing. That night, I couldn't stay still. I wandered through the house like a ghost in my own story. Every room had something to say. The dining room where laughter once lived. The nursery that had become nothing but shadows. The garden window, where I had watched my children grow, and then turn away. I stopped in the drawing room. The painting of Rose and me still hung there. 2 young girls in white dresses, sunlight caught in our hair. Arthur had painted it himself, years before everything changed. I used to think it was beautiful. Now it just felt like a lie. But as I looked closer, I noticed something strange. The corner of the canvas, slightly loose, like it had been tampered with. I reached out and lifted it carefully. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a folded page. My hands trembled as I peeled it free. It wasn't one of Arthur's letters. It was a map, a simple hand-drawn layout of the house, and marked with a tiny red cross was the cellar. Of course, Arthur always said the cellar was his private space, a workshop, nothing more. I had never thought to question it. But now, standing in the dim light, the memory of his secrecy came flooding back. The nights he'd disappear for hours, the way he'd return with dust on his hands and sorrow in his eyes. I went down there with the candlelight flickering ahead of me. The air was damp, heavy, filled with the smell of old stone. The shelves still held jars of nails, empty wine bottles, and half-finished wooden carvings. But in the far corner, under a sheet of rusted tin, I saw a small wooden box. It was sealed with wax and stamped with Arthur's initials. I brought it upstairs, heart pounding, and set it on the table. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, as if the truth inside might vanish if I looked too closely. When I finally broke the seal, I found a single photograph, Arthur, Rose, and a child, a little girl with my sister's smile. I think I stopped breathing. My hands went cold. The photograph fell onto the table, face down, and I just sat there, staring at nothing. There were papers underneath. Letters, birth certificates, legal documents. My eyes blurred as I read the words. Adoption record, confidential, 1948. It took me several minutes before I realized what it meant. The girl was mine, not by birth, but by deception. Arthur and Rose's child, raised as mine, Margaret, my daughter, was not my daughter at all. If you're still here, my dear listener, breathe with me for a moment. I know it's hard. Sometimes, stories like these aren't just told. They're survived. And if your heart's aching, give this video a little share. Maybe someone else will find it and know they're not alone. I sat there until dawn, the light creeping through the windows, like forgiveness I didn't deserve. When Margaret arrived later that morning, all bright smiles and false cheer, I could barely look at her. She started talking about auction lists, about the buyers and the appraisers. But all I heard was Rose's voice echoing in my mind. Forgive me. I wanted to shout the truth, to ask her, did you know? Did he tell you? But my throat betrayed me. The words wouldn't come. Instead, I just smiled faintly and said, "You'll be selling memories you don't even own, my dear." She laughed, confused, and I could see in her eyes that she didn't understand. Maybe she never would. When she left, I went to the window again. Outside, the sky was bruised with clouds. The house creaked softly behind me, as if exhaling. I whispered to Arthur, "I know now, and I forgive you." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt him near. Not as a ghost, but as a promise. And yet, deep down, I knew peace wouldn't last. Because once you open a secret, it never stays buried. The morning after I learned the truth, I found myself standing in the hall, holding that photograph again. Arthur, Rose, and little Margaret. I had turned it over a dozen times, hoping the image would change, hoping somehow the past might rewrite itself if I stared long enough. But it never did. It just stayed there, frozen in its cruel simplicity. 3 faces bound by love and me, the unknowing shadow who had built her life around them. The auction papers sat on the table beside the photograph, neatly stacked, printed, official, cold words describing warm memories. Lot 17, mahogany armchair, minor wear. Lot 22, porcelain teapot, floral motif. They didn't say the chair where Arthur held me after our first fight. They didn't note the teapot Rose gave me before she vanished. They just called them objects. That's what happens when people stop remembering. My dear, life becomes inventory. I spent the day drifting from room to room, my hand brushing across furniture, curtains, doorknobs, as if saying goodbye to old friends. Every touch brought back 1,000 whispers. The piano in the parlor still hummed faintly, a single string vibrating from the draft. It had been Margaret's piano once, or Rose's daughter's piano. I didn't know which name belonged anymore. But what hurt most wasn't the truth itself. It was how small it made me feel. My whole life, I had thought love was the foundation of this house. Now I knew it was built on silence and secrets, the kind that sink deep into the brick and never let go. If you've ever been lied to by someone you loved, truly loved, then you know the kind of ache that follows. It's not anger, it's emptiness. And if you're still listening, my dear, give this old voice a little heart. It lets me know I'm not alone in this emptiness. That evening, Henry returned again. This time not to talk, but to take things. He moved through the house like a stranger, opening drawers, lifting vases, stacking silverware. "We have to get started, Mum," he said without looking at me. "The auctioneers need to catalogue everything." Catalogue. Such a dreadful word. I watched him from my chair, the photograph tucked safely beneath my shawl. "Be careful," I said quietly. "Those things carry memories," he chuckled dryly. "Memories don't pay bills." No, but they build souls, I thought. As he packed away the last of the porcelain dolls from the mantel, something odd happened. The clock on the wall, silent for days, ticked once, just once, a sharp, echoing sound that made Henry glance up. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "He doesn't like what you're doing," he frowned. "Who?" "Your father." He scoffed and shook his head. "He's been dead 20 years, Mum." I smiled faintly. Some debts don't die that easily, Henry. That night, when the house grew quiet again, I went to the study. I lit the lamp and spread the letters across the desk. Arthur's confessions, Rose's apology, and the map. I didn't know what to do with them, only that I couldn't let my children sell them. Not the truth, not the heart of our home, so I hid them again. This time, beneath the floorboard under my armchair, a secret beneath the seat that had heard every secret before it. When I closed the board, the wind rattled the windows, and I could swear I heard Arthur's voice again. "Good girl." It was faint, almost kind. The next few days passed like a slow funeral. Strangers came and went through my doors, measuring, writing, nodding. They didn't see a home. They saw merchandise. One of them, a tall man with spectacles, paused at the hallway painting. "Fine craftsmanship," he said. "Should fetch a fair sum." "That's my sister," I said softly. He barely glanced at me. Lovely frame, not even a word about the faces. By the time they left, my world felt hollow. The shelves were empty, the rooms bare. Every sound echoed too loudly. Even my footsteps didn't seem to belong anymore. I sat down in the armchair again, listening to the house breathe. That's the thing about old homes. They don't just age, they mourn. Every removed object leaves a silence behind. The day before the auction, Margaret came alone. She looked exhausted, though she tried to hide it beneath her fine coat and painted smile. She sat opposite me, crossing her legs like she always did. "Mum," she began softly, "I know this is hard for you, but after tomorrow it'll all be over. You'll have enough money to move somewhere nice. Maybe by the sea." I stared at her for a long while. Her face, my sister's face, the same tilt of the chin, the same dimple when she tried not to cry. And I wanted to reach out and tell her everything, to confess that I knew. But what good would it do? Instead, I said, "Do you remember when you were little and you asked me why I never played the piano?" She smiled faintly. "You said it was because it reminded you of the past." I nodded. "That was a lie. The truth is, it reminded me of your mother." Her smile faltered. "My what?" I leaned forward slightly. "Nothing, dear. Just an old woman rambling." But I saw the confusion in her eyes, a small crack in the porcelain surface of her perfect world. She didn't press further. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of love. As she stood to leave, I said quietly, "Margaret, when the auction ends, promise me one thing." "What's that?" Don't sell the clock," she frowned. "The old thing. It's broken, Mum. Nobody wants it." "I do," I said. "And sometimes what's unwanted is what matters most." She didn't reply, just sighed, kissed my forehead, and walked out. Her perfume lingered after her. Sweet, expensive, suffocating. That night, the storm came. Heavy rain, wind howling through the chimneys, thunder shaking the window panes. I couldn't sleep. The house was restless too. Doors rattled, walls creaked. Somewhere, a picture fell. I lit my candle and made my way downstairs. Water dripped through the ceiling, pooling near the rug. I followed the sound until I reached the study. The floorboard where I had hidden the letters was slightly raised. I knelt and touched it. Cold, damp. The storm had found its way in. Or something else had. When I lifted the board, the letters were gone. Gone. Every single one. The candle flickered violently. My heart raced. I looked around the room. Shadows danced across the walls, and I thought I saw movement by the window. Then I heard it. The faintest whisper. Eleanor, Arthur's voice. Or maybe Rose's. Or maybe it was the house itself, weeping for what had been stolen. I stood there, gripping the candle like a weapon, whispering into the darkness. Who took them? The whisper came again, louder this time. They did. Lightning flashed, and for a heartbeat, I saw two shapes outside, Margaret and Henry, standing by the car, papers in hand, arguing. Even through the rain, I could hear them shouting. I pressed my hand against the cold window glass. My children, the thieves of my memories. I sank to the floor, tears mixing with candle wax, and whispered, "Arthur, you were right. They found it before me." The wind howled again, and this time I swear I heard him say, "Then you must make them remember." When dawn came, the storm had passed, but the house felt heavier, as if soaked in sorrow. I moved through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, the banisters, the door frames. Tomorrow strangers would walk here. Tomorrow my life would be sold, piece by piece, but not quietly. not without truth. If you're still listening, my dear, stay close. The next part will hurt, I think. It always does, when love meets betrayal at the final curtain. And if you've ever had to say goodbye to something you loved, leave me a small prayer in the comments. Maybe the wind will carry it here, because tomorrow is the auction. The morning of the auction began with silence. Not peace, but the heavy kind that presses against your ribs. Even the birds seemed too ashamed to sing. I sat by the window, shawl wrapped tight around my shoulders, watching the grey clouds shift across the sky. The house was colder than usual, though the fire was lit. Maybe it was me. Maybe all warmth had finally decided to leave with the rest of my possessions. I could hear them outside, the voices of strangers, men unloading tables, setting up signs, laughing. The Ashbury Estate auction, 10 a.m. That's what the banner said, though it might as well have read, the dissection of a life. My children arrived shortly after. Henry looked tired, perhaps from guilt, though I doubt he'd name it that. Margaret wore black, not for mourning, but fashion. Her eyes darted from room to room as if afraid to meet mine. "Mum," she said softly, "the auctioneers are here. You should stay in the parlour. It'll be easier for you." Easier. Such a simple word for something so unbearable. I nodded, pretending to agree, though I had no intention of staying quiet. When they left, I stood and looked around the parlour. Bare walls, empty shelves. Only the armchair and clock remained. I touched the clock gently. It hadn't ticked since Arthur died, but its hand still pointed to that same moment. 3:07, the minute my life stopped and memory began. A knock on the door startled me. It was the auctioneer. A tall man with a crisp accent and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Ashbury," he said politely, "if you'd like, we can seat you comfortably while the proceedings go on. The buyers may have questions about certain items, and your insight could add sentimental value." Sentimental value, I repeated softly. "Is that what you call the remains of a family?" He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Ma'am, I only mean—" "I know what you mean," I interrupted, turning away. "Proceed. Let's see how much my life is worth." He hesitated, then nodded and left. Moments later, voices filled the house. People walking, whispering, bidding. The thud of shoes against wooden floors. The sound of coins against clipboard pages. It began with the silver. Arthur's collection of spoons from every city he had travelled for work. The auctioneer lifted one and said, "Lot 1, Edwardian sterling set with engraving, starting at £10. £10. That's what his travels, his efforts, his dreams had become." Then the books went. First editions, letters tucked between pages, annotations written by my own hand. No one cared. No one saw. Just items to fill other shelves, in other homes that would never know their stories. And then, the music box, lot 12. A small brass box, with chipped paint and a melody that once lulled Margaret, my sister's daughter, to sleep every night. The auctioneer wound it once. It played its haunting tune, Green Sleeves, slow and sorrowful, before sputtering into silence. "Broken," someone said. "Still charming," another replied. £5. £5. I felt something inside me twist. I rose from the chair before I even realized I'd moved. "Stop," I said, my voice trembling but firm. The crowd turned. "That music box," I said, stepping forward. Do you know what it held? My sister's lullabies, my daughter's tears, my husband's hands fixing it each winter when the gears froze. And you! I pointed toward the man who had bid. "You won it for £5. The room fell silent. Even the auctioneer hesitated. "Mum, please?" Margaret whispered from the corner. But I kept going. This house isn't for sale. These things aren't just things. Every one of them holds breath, warmth, laughter. You can't sell that. The auctioneer smiled uncomfortably. "Ma'am, the items, they're mine," I snapped. "Every tear, every touch, every sleepless night is mine, and you'll never know their cost." The silence after that was suffocating. Then a soft clap came from the back of the room. A woman, elderly like me, wearing a hat with a veil. "She's right," she said. "We're buying ghosts." Her words rippled through the crowd. For a moment, I thought the auction might stop. But Henry stepped forward quickly, his face pale with embarrassment. "Please, everyone, my mother is confused." "Let's continue." He turned to me sharply. "Mum, sit down." I met his gaze. "Tell them the truth, Henry." He frowned. "What truth?" "That these aren't just things. They're my memories. And you're selling them to pay for comfort you'll never deserve." His jaw tightened. "Enough." He gestured for one of the workers to lead me back to the chair. I let them. My body was too tired to fight anymore, but my eyes never left him. The auction continued. One item after another, my memories marched out of the house. The porcelain teapot, sold. The quilt I stitched by candlelight, sold. The grandfather clock, passed over once, then sold too, despite my plea. When the clock left the room, something changed. A sound echoed through the walls. A deep creak, followed by a sharp tick. The house exhaled. The crowd froze. Even the auctioneer glanced around nervously. Then, tick, 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 the clock had started again. Everyone stared as the hands began to spin. Not forward, but backward. Faster and faster, until the numbers blurred. "Must be a trick," someone whispered. But I knew better. The air grew thick, cold, almost electric. I could hear whispers again. Faint, layered, endless. Rose, Arthur, children's laughter. The piano, the lullaby. All at once, Margaret gasped. Henry dropped his clipboard. I smiled. "They're not gone," I whispered. They were never gone. The walls shuddered softly. A painting fell, glass shattered. The chandelier above swayed as if caught in an unseen wind. People panicked, running toward the door, their money forgotten. But I stayed seated, watching, listening. "Arthur," I whispered. And then, through the spinning clock hands, I saw him, for a moment, standing by the doorway, not young, not old, but timeless. He smiled sadly. "They tried to sell your love," he said. "But love doesn't leave, Eleanor. It haunts what it can't hold." I reached out, trembling. "Then let it haunt me forever." He nodded once. And then, like smoke, he was gone. The clock stopped. The hands froze again at 3:07, and the silence returned. But this time it was warm. The auctioneer, pale and shaking, muttered, "We should go." And they did, every last one of them. Even Henry and Margaret. They didn't say a word. They just fled into the rain, and I was left, alone again, with the ticking of my heart. If you're still here with me, my dear, leave me a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had to watch your memories being taken away. Because maybe, somewhere out there, another old soul is listening, waiting to be remembered too. That night, I didn't light a candle. I didn't need to. The house itself glowed faintly, as though the storm had left behind a soft, ghostly fire in its bones. Every room breathed again. Faint whispers and sighs from the walls, the faint scent of lavender, and dust rising like memory itself. The clock sat quietly in the hallway, its hands still frozen at that sacred time. I could almost feel it watching me, waiting for me to understand something I'd ignored for too long. I made tea. Habit, I suppose. The kettle still worked, though the sound of its boiling water seemed lonelier than ever. I poured it into my last remaining cup and sat by the fire, the house creaking softly around me. That's when I saw them again, my children. Through the window, Henry and Margaret, standing near the car in the drizzle. They thought I couldn't hear, but old walls carry voices. She's losing it. Henry muttered. We can't go on like this. Maybe she's right. Margaret said quietly. About what? Ghosts? No, she whispered, her voice trembling. About memories. Henry ran a hand through his hair. It's too late now. Everything's gone. I closed my eyes. No, I thought, not everything. Because I could feel it, deep beneath the floorboards. The pulse of the house, alive and remembering. The letters might have been stolen, the objects sold, but the truth had never left. I finished my tea, stood, and walked to the study. The floorboard where the letters once were seemed slightly raised again. I knelt, my fingers tracing the wood. Show me, I whispered. A gust of air brushed my face. Cold, but kind. And then, there it was. One letter, lying in the hollow. Not all of them, just one. The oldest one, Arthur's handwriting, faded, trembling. I unfolded it slowly. My dearest Eleanor, it began. If you are reading this, then I have failed to protect what we built. The truth has roots deeper than love itself. It hides, waiting for pain to unearth it. I held my breath, reading on. Rose was not yours to lose, and Margaret was not hers to claim. The child was ours, Eleanor, yours and mine, but she was given away to hide our shame. My sister Rose took her when the whispers grew too cruel. It was meant to be temporary. You were ill, and they said you might not recover. I believed them. Forgive me. The room swayed around me. My fingers trembled. I pressed the letter against my chest, as if my heart could absorb the words and make them disappear. Margaret was mine, my daughter, my flesh and blood, a lifetime spent calling her my sister's child. And all along, she was the one thing I never truly lost. I sank to the floor, tears streaming freely now. The pain, the confusion, the betrayal, they dissolved into something deeper, a strange kind of peace, because suddenly everything made sense. The clock's time, the voices, the feeling that the house had been waiting for me to remember. I looked up, and for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I saw her, a little girl, standing in the doorway, curls wild, smile bright. Mama, she said softly. Margaret, I whispered. The image faded, but the warmth stayed. Outside I could still hear my children, my real children, arguing by the car. But I didn't rush to them, not yet. There are moments in life when silence says more than words ever could. Instead, I sat back in the armchair, the same one where Arthur used to read aloud, and let the memories pour through me. Every birthday, every tear, every sound of tiny feet down the hallway. They weren't gone. They had only been waiting. The clock ticked once, then again. Then a steady rhythm returned. Slow, beautiful, eternal. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I smiled through my tears. You can rest now, I whispered to the house. We've remembered. And just like that, the wind outside softened. The storm clouds parted, and faint sunlight spilled through the lace curtains. The dust in the air shimmered like golden snow. Then, footsteps behind me. Mum! It was Margaret. Her voice was trembling. I came back. I turned slowly. She stood there, pale, her eyes red. I found the letters, she said, holding a small bundle in her hands. They were in Henry's car. He didn't want you to see them. I nodded. I've already seen enough. She took a hesitant step closer. Is it true? Yes, I said quietly. You were never my niece, Margaret. You were my daughter. She stared at me, frozen. But to how? Because love and fear can both make people lie, I said softly. And sometimes, the lies last longer than the people who tell them. For a long while, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she began to cry. Not the kind of cry you hide. The kind that breaks years of silence in one trembling breath. I reached for her hand. Come sit, I whispered. There's still time to remember. She knelt beside me, resting her head on my lap. just as she used to when she was little, when I was only Auntie. And for the first time in decades, I felt like a mother again. The house sighed, a soft, content sound, like the closing of a book. The fireplace crackled gently, and for the first time since Arthur's death, I didn't feel alone. Hours passed like seconds. We spoke about everything, about Rose, about lies, about forgiveness. She told me she remembered flashes of something, lullabies, a scent, the warmth of a hand she couldn't place. It was me. When she finally left that evening, she promised to come back, not for the money, not for the estate, for me. As the door closed behind her, I whispered into the quiet, "Do you hear that, Arthur?" She called me Mum. The clock chimed softly in response. And maybe it was the light, or maybe it was something else. But for just an instant, I saw him there again, standing by the piano, smiling. "Now," he said gently, "you can rest too." I nodded. "Not yet," I whispered. "There's still a story to tell, because stories, you see, don't die when people do. They linger, like the scent of roses in an empty hall. And maybe that's why you're still listening. Maybe my voice found you for a reason. If you're still here, my dear, tell me, where are you watching from? Tell me if this old house reminds you of anyone you once loved. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the end. Because the end, my love, is where the truth finally comes home." The next morning came soft and golden, the kind of light that feels like forgiveness. The rain had washed everything clean. The rooftops, the garden path, even the cracked stone angels by the gate seemed a little less sorrowful. I woke before the clock struck, though I knew it would chime soon enough. The air in the house felt different now, lighter, though still tinged with the sadness of all it had endured. I rose slowly, my bones stiff, my breath shallow. The auction signs had been taken down. The men had gone. The house, for the first time in days, belonged to me again. But not all ghosts had left. When I entered the parlor, the armchair faced the window just as I'd left it, and there, by the fireplace, stood Henry, his back to me, shoulders hunched. The morning light fell across him like a confession waiting to happen. "I knew you'd come back," I said softly. He didn't turn. "I had to make sure you were all right." "You mean, to see if the old woman had finally gone mad enough to sign the papers," I said. He sighed. "Mom, please don't do this." I moved closer. The floor creaked under my steps. "Do what? Speak the truth." He turned then, his face pale, eyes red. "You don't understand. I didn't want to hurt you, but you did," I said gently. "You sold my memories, Henry. You took the only things that knew me before I forgot myself." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. I thought if we cleared the debts, if we sold the house, you'd finally have peace. You could live near the coast, somewhere quiet. His voice broke. "I just wanted to stop the past from swallowing you." I watched him carefully. He looked so much like his father when he lied. The way his eyes shifted, how his hands trembled, only when they thought they weren't being seen. "You took the letters, didn't you?" I asked. He froze. "Margaret found them," I said. "In your car." He sat down heavily on the piano bench, his head in his hands. "I didn't mean for her to see them. I didn't want her to hate you." I tilted my head. "And did she?" He shook his head slowly. "No, she hated me instead." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked softly. The fire whispered. The house waited. "Do you know what I've learned, Henry?" I said finally. "When you spend a lifetime trying to protect someone from the truth, you only make it more painful when it finally arrives." He lifted his eyes to mine. And for the first time in years, I saw the boy he used to be. The boy who built toy boats in the garden pond. The boy who believed the world could be fixed if you just worked hard enough. "I wanted to protect you," he said again. "I never asked you to," I replied. "I only ever wanted you to remember me as I was, not as a burden to erase. He looked down, his voice barely a whisper. Then I failed. I moved closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. Now, my dear, you've finally learned. He looked up sharply, confusion flickering in his eyes. Learned what? That you can't sell the past, I said softly. You can only live with it. The clock struck once, just once. Though its hands didn't move, Henry glanced toward it nervously. That thing still works. I smiled faintly. Only when it has something to say. He frowned. Something to say? Before I could answer, a sound came from upstairs. A soft thud, then another. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Henry's head snapped toward the ceiling. Who's that? An old friend, I said. The footsteps grew louder, descending the staircase. The air turned cold. I could feel him before I saw him. Arthur. His shadow moved first, stretching across the floorboards, tall and calm. Then the faint outline of his figure. Not solid, not ghostly either. Something between. Henry stepped back, his face pale. What is that? I smiled. Your father. Finally home. Henry shook his head, trembling. No, this isn't real. You're seeing things. But the clock began ticking again. Steady, echoing. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Arthur's voice filled the room, deep and calm, though his lips didn't move. You've done what I couldn't, Eleanor. You made them see. Tears welled in my eyes. It's not too late, is it? He looked toward Henry. Not if he remembers. Henry stumbled backward, shaking. Remember what? Arthur's shadow pointed toward the piano. Play it. What? The song, I whispered. The one I used to sing when you were little. Do you remember it? Henry hesitated. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. Then slowly, he began to play. The notes stumbled at first, broken, uncertain, but then found their way. The melody filled the house, soft and mournful. Green sleeves. The same tune the music box once played. As the final note lingered in the air, the house exhaled. A long, deep breath of peace. The sunlight through the window shimmered like gold dust. The shadows softened. Arthur's voice came again, faint now. Now she can rest. And with that, he was gone. The warmth remained, but the presence faded like mist. Henry sat frozen at the piano, tears streaming down his face. I heard him, he whispered. I heard him. I nodded. Then listen carefully, my son, because some things are only said once. We sat there for a long while, mother and son, surrounded by echoes of love and regret. The house was quiet again. Not empty, not haunted, just full of memory. When he finally stood, Henry wiped his eyes. What will you do now? I smiled faintly. Stay, I suppose. Someone has to keep the memories company. He nodded slowly. I'll come back tomorrow. I know, I said. You always do. He hesitated by the door. Mum, I'm sorry. So am I, dear, I whispered. For forgetting what love costs. When he left, the silence returned. But this time, it didn't hurt. It simply was. A living silence. The kind that breathes when everything has finally been said. I looked around at the bare walls, the empty shelves, the floor that had seen so much sorrow, and I smiled. Do you see, Arthur? I murmured. They remembered. The clock chimed once more, just once, and I knew then. The house was done keeping secrets. If you're still here with me, my dear, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Tell me if you've ever forgiven someone who broke your heart, because sometimes stories like mine are only meant to help others find peace in their own haunted rooms. Do you hear that clock ticking faintly in the hallway? It's been counting the seconds since my children left. Since the auction ended, the sound has become my only company now, marking every heartbeat of this empty house. When they carried out the last chest, Arthur's chest, I didn't cry, not because I had no tears left, but because I knew if I started, I might never stop. You know, my dear, Time is strange. It takes everything from you, yet leaves the echoes. Even now, I can still hear their laughter from years ago, running down that staircase, begging me for apple pie. And today, I watch those same hands lift my life into boxes and sell it to strangers. I tried to tell myself they didn't mean harm. Perhaps it was just money, or maybe they wanted to move on faster than grief allows. But as I sat by the window, watching the rain stain the sold sign, something inside me broke in a way that felt final. If you're still listening, my dear, don't forget to subscribe. Not for me, but for the stories of people like us, whose memories get forgotten in dusty corners. Maybe our stories can find a home, even if our children don't remember us anymore. That evening, I made myself tea. The kettle sang like it always did. Only this time, the sound echoed differently. The walls didn't absorb it. They pushed it back toward me, sharp and hollow. I looked at the empty mantelpiece. Arthur's watch was gone. Rose's photograph was gone. Even the lace I had crocheted during the winter of '58 was missing. Do you know what it feels like when the air remembers more than the people do? When every breath you take tastes of ghosts? I wandered through the rooms. The auctioneer's tags still clung to the furniture, like cruel little reminders. Lot 17, Lot 21. My life reduced to numbers. I stopped by the piano, the same one my daughter learned to play on. The one she had begged me not to sell when she was 16. She was the first to sign it away today. My heart didn't break like glass. It cracked like wood, slow, deep, with sound. I sat on the bench and pressed a key. Middle C, it rang sharp, desperate, alive. I pressed another, and another. The music came out like sobs, trembling, broken, full of things I'd never said aloud. Arthur had always said, music was how the soul confesses what words cannot. Maybe that's why I played, until my fingers shook and the candle burned out beside me. When silence returned, it wasn't empty. It was thick, like fog. And through it, I heard something. A whisper. Soft. Familiar. You kept your promise, Eliza. I froze. That was Arthur's voice. Not in my head. No, it came from the corner near the staircase. I turned slowly. The air shimmered near the spot where his portrait used to hang. I whispered, Arthur. The floorboard creaked. Then nothing. Just the slow, aching tick of the clock again. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't. Maybe when you've lost everything, even fear feels like a companion. I smiled, a frail, foolish smile, and said, I tried, my love. I kept the house warm for as long as I could. You won't believe this, my dear listener, but the air shifted then. Warmer, the scent of his pipe tobacco drifted faintly through the room. That same sweet, earthy smell he loved. I closed my eyes and let it wrap around me like a shawl. Do you forgive me? I whispered. No answer came. Just the softest brush of warmth against my cheek, like the ghost of a kiss. And I knew, deep inside, that I was forgiven. For hours, I sat there, feeling him beside me. The rain eased, the wind quieted, and for the first time since the auction, the house didn't feel hollow. It felt patient, like it was waiting for me to finish something. The next morning, I brewed tea again. Only one cup this time. I dressed in my best cardigan, the one Arthur always said made me look like a woman of poetry. Then I gathered what little was left. An old letter, a pressed rose, and a key. The key to this house. I walked through each room, touching the walls, whispering goodbye to every corner. Thank you for keeping me, I said to the kitchen where I'd cooked for half a century. Forgive me, I said to the nursery that never held grandchildren. And when I reached the front door, I placed the key on the table. My hand lingered on the knob. The light coming through the window was soft, almost gold. If you're still listening, my dear, I murmured. Tell me in the comments. What would you keep if your memories were for sale? I'd like to know. Before I go, I stepped outside. The garden, though overgrown, was beautiful in the morning mist. Arthur's rosebush had bloomed again, crimson and defiant, as if he'd sent it for me. I smiled, and for the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt expected. I followed the narrow path down to the old willow. Its branches bowed low, brushing my shoulders like kind hands. Beneath it lay the small stone Arthur had carved our initials into. When we first moved here, E and A, 1952, the carving had faded, moss creeping through the letters. Yet it was still there, stubbornly holding on. I knelt down and traced it with my fingertips. The cold stone pulsed faintly under my skin. Or maybe that was just my own trembling heart. "It's all gone now, Arthur," I whispered. "The furniture, the china, even our wedding clock. But this, they didn't take this." A soft wind sighed through the grass, almost answering. I smiled. I suppose we never really lose anything that was carved with love. I sat there for a long time. The world felt slower, gentler, like it knew I needed a few more minutes. Then I looked up at the house one last time. The windows glimmered in the morning light. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a shadow in the upstairs window, as if Arthur was standing there, watching me leave. Tears warmed my cheeks. "You always did hate goodbyes," I murmured. I turned toward the gate. The hinges groaned, but the sound no longer felt lonely, just old like me. As I stepped onto the road, the sunlight spilled across my shoes. I thought of my children then, of Margaret's hurried signature, of Daniel's downcast eyes. I wasn't angry anymore, only tired. People do what they think they must to survive. Perhaps they didn't understand that this house wasn't just bricks. It was breath, memory, prayer. If you're still with me, my dear listener, give this old heart a little sign. A like, a whisper in the comments. Tell me you heard me, that my story didn't fade into silence. Because that's all we ever want in the end, to be heard. I walked until the house was just a blur behind the hedges. The road curved toward the village. I could hear the church bell tolling, 10 slow notes. Each one sounded softer than the last, as if it too were saying goodbye. My legs ached, so I sat on a stone wall by the field. The scent of wet earth rose around me, and in it I caught that faint trace of pipe tobacco again. I closed my eyes. "Arthur," I breathed. And just like that, the air stilled. I felt a warmth by my side, and the quiet hum of a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I opened my eyes, but the lane was empty, only sunlight dancing through dust. Yet somehow I knew. I whispered, "I'm coming home." A calmness washed through me. Not sadness, not fear, just peace. My hands stopped trembling. The ticking of the world grew distant, like a clock winding down. They found me hours later, the neighbors said, sitting by the willow, a faint smile on my lips, the teacup still warm beside me. They said it looked as if I'd fallen asleep, listening to someone tell me a story. Perhaps I had. Now, if you've stayed till the end, bless you. You've listened longer than my own children ever did. Maybe that means something. Maybe it means that memories can live again through you. So promise me, dear listener, keep a photograph somewhere safe. Don't sell it. Don't hide it in a drawer. Look at it sometimes and remember that love, once given, never truly leaves. That's what I learned at the auction, where my children sold my memories. They couldn't sell the love. They never will. The house stands empty now, but at night, travelers say they see a candle glowing in the upstairs window, and they hear a piano playing the same trembling notes of middle C. If you ever pass by and hear it, stop for a moment. Listen. You might hear me humming along. And if you do, whisper back a hello, because I'll still be here, keeping the house warm. A soft pause. Then the voice fades. Thank you for listening, my dear. Don't forget to subscribe. Not for me, but for every grandmother whose memories still wait to be heard.